right, well, we're here today with Stephanie Gates, and the Baptist Student Ministry Director at UNT, and Morgan Malone, the Director of Missions for Denton Association, and we're talking a little bit about how they're engaging churches with the collegiate age range in Denton, and trying to provide some strategy and plan for our churches and the BSM all together to partner to reach students in this area. So let's just kind of jump in and you guys share some of your story about what you've been doing to help local churches to be a part of reaching the student population in this city with two large campuses.
Yeah, I think Denton is a unique situation. We have two large universities, the University of North Texas and Texas Women's TWU, and then we have a community college network that's in our area as well. Mm-hmm. And so on average, we have about 60,000 college students in Denton County. And with that realization, recognizing, okay, we have over 90 churches in our association, but yet only one has the resources available to have a full-time college pastor. And then even that position was empty for over a year. And so a couple years ago, myself, Morgan, Micah from TWU, and then a local college minister that was here, we just started saying we've got to do something. How can we cast a vision to rally other churches to see why is it important to engage students and what can we do about that? And then how can we help them understand what are the realities that are happening, how has ministry changed, and how can we better engage these students? Because literally God has brought them to us. We don't get to just dismiss them. We have to do something about that. And that's really where our conversations started. It was just a group of us sitting here in my office saying, what do we do? And from there, I think we just started to try to think through, like, how can we strategically approach this? And so I brought in an idea of like a church involvement plan of, okay, if we have all these churches, how can we specifically encourage every church to put college ministry on their radar? And so that plan included, I think there's 4 levels of involvement that you can present to a church. I think the first level would be a praying church, someone who will commit to pray for college ministry in our county every month. And so then they would get an email from us, from both campuses, just literally saying, like, here are ways you can pray. Yeah. The next would be, kind of like the next step, would be a giving church, saying not only are we going to pray, but we want to give more of our funds to the association to put specifically to college ministry. And so trying to really build not only this prayer support, but also just some financial aspects that would help us do what we need to do as our campuses continue to grow. The third would be a serving church. And so this would be a church that says we want to partner and strengthen what you're already doing on your campus. So whether that be we want to provide meals for free lunch or for our Thursday night dinners, or we want to partner with you to do ministry with international students by hosting them at our home, doing an international student dinner, or maybe conversation partners. So getting into, like, how do we take some steps to get onto campus to help you serve? And the fourth would be a mobilizing church. And my hope is within the next couple of years, we would see every church within a 2 to 3 mile radius of one of our campuses saying we want to mobilize students. So not only do we want to come up with an intentional plan to disciple students, but then how do we mobilize them back to their campus and to be missionaries, ambassadors of reconciliation of the gospel, where God has placed them. And in that effort of being mobilizers, they can partner with the BSM so we can come in and say, let us train them to be evangelists. If you can step in and have an intentional discipleship plan for how you're going to really develop students, let us fill this and let's partner together to do that. And so we identified 8 key churches that we say we think they could be great mobilizing churches. Some of them are a little further in the process than others, but we've identified those 8. They're close to our campuses. Some of them already had students that were there. Some of them already have put things in place that have been, I think they're great programs. And so that's kind of been where we are. And the hope that I have is that over the next few years, we would continue to see those churches that want to be mobilizers continue to grow. And so I think that's kind of been how everything got started. What else would you add to that?
Well, the driving force for the conversation was that, as Stephanie's already said, you got 60,000 college students in the area. And we just tried to ballpark some numbers and think about how many of those students are engaged in a local church. I mean, we were thinking somewhere around maybe 2,000. So you've still got, you know, a huge amount of people, over 59,000, that are not engaged. And that's, you know, that's a significant number. And the indications for us would suggest that number's going to continue to grow. So that's what kind of drove my desire to see something. And through that conversation, we really wanted to say to these churches, as Stephanie has stated, that we want to partner with you. We don't want the BSM to be a substitute for local church involvement.
Right.
We want this to be more of a partnership. And I think we're moving in that direction. I think we've had to ask questions of the BSM, and our churches have asked some questions, and we're in process, recognizing that churches are going to be on different levels. But at the end of the day, we're saying that we want to reach this particular demographic age group that's not being reached.
Right.
And that's the end goal for us.
Where would you say, just as you interact with churches on a regular basis, where would you say your churches are as far as having college students on their radar, so to speak, for ministry and engaging them locally?
It's a great question. My speculation would be that those churches that are closer to the campuses are thinking more about college students. So churches in Denton would tend to think more about college students than churches in Louisville and Sanger and Pilot Point and Aubrey, or the Colony. But yet we know that there are college students in those locations.
Right.
And we know that from conversations Stephanie's had recently, that there are several of those churches that are beginning to think about, this group exists, they're here, what can we do to reach them? And I think that's another aspect of what's come out of this discussion, has been that what can the BSM do to be a resource for that local church? Honestly, I don't know that I had thought about it from that perspective, but I think both Stephanie and Micah have, for lack of a better term, stepped up their game in regard to how can we provide some up-to-date, current information on what's going on and how we can actually reach them. And that information's coming from two ladies who are practitioners every day on the college campus.
Yeah, that's good. What if you had to boil it down to, these are some specific needs that we've seen that our local churches have to be strengthened or trained in order for them to really engage students, what would you say those things are?
I think first is understanding how culture has changed. I think having an understanding that we're truly in a post-Christian culture now. So where the church used to be an influencer in culture, that's no longer the case. And we have to recognize that research is not only saying that things have changed, like it is firmly saying this is reality now. And when we can recognize, okay, how culture has shifted, then that means the way we interact and engage students in particular has changed. Before, it was very easy to wait for them to come to us. I know when I first started here on campus 13 years ago, students would just walk in every day wanting to know about how to get involved in the BSM. That's not the case anymore. And so for us to sit back and wait means we can't engage.
Yeah.
Means they're not coming. So how do we then go to where they are? And I think that's been a conversation that keeps happening. And then the next question is, well, how do I meet them? And then the next question is, okay, once I kind of start to navigate that, then what do I do with them when I do meet them? And so I think it really comes down to three big questions. Why are they not here? How do I meet them? And then what do I do? And so what I'm trying to think through is how do I have those conversations in a really helpful way? How do we meet? BSM provides an opportunity for you to come right to where they are. I want to help you strategize and think through, well, where are they in your community? And when it comes to, like, what do we do with them? What are the biggest needs of students? They need a safe place to ask questions. They need to know that it's okay for me to come in and say, I don't believe in God. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
I don't know, like, my friends view the church this way, and I don't know what I think. Can we talk about that? I don't trust authority, and you're telling me these things. What do I do with that? And then I think the biggest need, and I've been doing all kinds of research this semester, has been the students that we meet. I used to just assume everybody was either a Christian or had a Christian understanding. That has now shifted.
Right.
My assumption now is you're not a Christian until you prove me otherwise. And I think that's helpful to recognize that I no longer expect them to have any kind of a biblical worldview, any kind of understanding of the Bible. And even if they grew up in church, I assume that they probably can't tell me what the gospel is. And so I want to start there. And then what that just proves to me is they need intentional discipleship that is has the flexibility of being tailored to them. So that they have an adult maybe sitting down with one or two of them and literally just saying, like, okay, let's study the Bible together. I want to teach you how to do that. Or let's just ask her questions and let's just dive into scripture. It's going to look different every week. And I think those would be some of the big things that I hope the church will continue to try to investigate and talk about. So.
And, personally, Ginger, I would say my background is pastoring churches for 26 years before I took this position. And so when Stephanie mentions this idea of there is antagonism toward the church, we read in another book that Stephanie and I have read and that she challenges her students to read, I Once Was Lost, and in that book, they talk about one of the basics is that people today have a distrust for particularly Christians, and one of the things you have to do in the process of trying to reach them for the gospel is to help them to understand they need to move toward trusting someone. I didn't think about that. Secondly, I didn't think about the fact that this person has probably never been exposed to a local church. I grew up in a time where at the very least you went to Vacation Bible School, right? And now we're in a situation where we have adults who have had little or no experience, and unfortunately maybe that experience has been bad or negative. And so we've got to overcome that hurdle. And so that's a different way of thinking. I know one of the things Stephanie said is that sometimes churches have come and the first question they ask is, what's your name? And the second question they ask is, where do you go to church? And she shared that with me, and she said, okay, this can be an immediate turnoff. And when she said that, it was convicting to myself because I'm guilty of doing that, even today. And so it's caused me to think through, okay, if the church for them has a negative connotation, I've got to overcome that particular obstacle, hurdle, to get to the point of being trustworthy.
Right.
And so that's a key component for anyone, anywhere, in dealing with this particular generation and age group. And we've got to be willing to start there. It's as if the starting point has moved.
Yes.
It's backed up, for lack of a better term. We're starting further away from the kingdom than we did, 5-10 years ago. And so that's, to me, that's a key component that I would want our local churches to understand. We can't do outreach, we can't do evangelism like we've done before with an assumption that these people have some understanding of what it means to be a Christian and to go to church.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you guys discuss these things together, and I know you're not finished discussing them, there's pretty more
Yeah.
that you're
It's
trying
a
to-
work in progress.
Yeah. But what are some things that you've come to, like as you engage churches and as you spend time with them, you know, in a training meeting or things like that? What are those things that you've been sharing with them? Those primary things.
I think a lot of what we even just have already said, just what's the
Culture,
reality.
yeah.
Even what is the role of the BSM, and how do we, what are we trying to do as far as getting students connected to the local church? I think the understanding in the past was BSM was kind of the door to the local church in some ways, where it was our responsibility to get the student to their church. Well, that doesn't work anymore. We still want to be the bridge, but shifting what is the primary function of the BSM, what's the primary function of how we're explaining that to the local church, and trying to help them, I think, understand that the way it used to work to get students there isn't working anymore. And in response to that, we're primarily focusing on evangelism. And as we meet new students, that are interested, we're gonna try to send them and get them connected to a student that's already in a church so that they can go to church with that friend. And just, I think, shifting some of the perspectives of how BSM, I think how they view BSM before.
Right. Yeah.
And I think just really asking, like, what's your plan? What do you want to do? How can we help you? And I think sometimes a lot of them couldn't answer those questions. Like saying, we don't even know. What does that look like? And I think that's kind of where we are right now, is recognizing there's a need and what are those next steps. And I think the thing, we've been having these big group meetings with these different churches, which has been really encouraging that we're having these conversations. I almost feel like now we're at the point where they almost need to go individual, because each church is going to look a little different.
Yes.
And I think that that's a really good and healthy thing. And for us to step in and say, okay, what could it look like for you to obediently pursue students? And then what does that look like for you? And to recognize they're all going to look different.
Yeah, they're going to be different.
And to give them the freedom to celebrate that and to recognize that the students, there's 38,000 here at UNT. And so each one of us is going to be able to meet a different demographic or a different student. And different students are looking for different things. And so to feel like we don't have to replicate what might be working here. And so I think that's kind of where we are right now, is what are those next conversations in almost a more of an individual form. And then I think the next question that Morgan and I were just talking about was, how can we then cast a vision and come up with ideas of what does it like for us to partner together to do this? And so that's where we're at, and I think kind of how I see some of the next steps that are coming.
And I would say too, I mean, one of the things that Stephanie has noticed and that we've talked about is that we do have churches that are getting in contact with our BSM directors and asking, how can we better connect? And that's encouraging.
Yeah.
But the reality is, it goes back to the biblical pattern. And that is the fact that we go where they are. You know, the idea of being close in proximity. And Stephanie does a much better job of explaining this with 3 strategies that she talks about. But it is identifying where these students are hanging out and then beginning to hang out with them. Which would be a mandate for any ministry to any age group.
Yes.
But yet we tend to forget about that. Going where people are.
And inviting in instead of going out.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a big shift, like what Morgan was just referencing, I always say it's all about proximity, presence, and patience. If you want to engage college students, you got to be where they are. And so you've got to figure out where are they and how do I just get around them. My proximity has to change. Next is my presence. I have to not only say I want to invest, but I have to invest well and be consistent. If you're not consistent, if you're only there to meet students and get them to your church, college students smell out fake a mile away. They're skeptical. They're looking for a reason not to trust you. You have to prove them wrong.
Yes.
And that takes time, and that's where patience comes in. We want to see that instant salvation where I met you, I shared the gospel, you came to my church, we got you baptized, and all of that happened within a week or a month. that doesn't exist anymore. It exists, but it's very rare. And
Right.
so for us to be able to recognize, okay, how do I get to you? How do I invest really, really well? And then how can I just be patient and trust that as I'm investing in you, I'm gonna get to have conversations with you about the gospel.
Mhm.
Partially because you're just seeing like what's going on in your life. Why are you loving me? Why are you showing up? They're going to ask questions.
Yeah.
And then when they realize, okay, I think I can trust you, they're gonna start to push a little because they want to prove you wrong. And then in those moments you get to lovingly engage with the gospel, and ultimately a lot of it is just sharing about what God's doing in your life.
Mhm.
And then just trusting the Holy Spirit is going to move and work by just faithfully saying, God, I'm available and I'm going to obediently show up. And it's not about fancy programs. Those things work once they're in your church. Then you have that. But they're not just going to walk in like I was saying. So how do you get around them? What do you do? And so if you can think through, what does it look like for me to intentionally invest? And that sounds really scary because a lot of people think that takes a lot of time. I don't have time.
Right, and time is the
Yep.
commodity.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
more for college
Yep.
ministry than anything else.
And what I say is there's two different forms of discipleship. There's two different ways you can do it. One is formal and one is informal. Formal is we're going to have this scheduled time, we have a plan in place, we're going to sit down, we're going to do this. Informal is what's missing. Where we just say it's not adding anything to our schedule, but it's saying come live life with me.
Mhm.
And so as you're getting to meet those students, inviting them in to your home to do dinner, I'd say as a businessman, like what would it look like for you to invite a guy to come and maybe do a business trip with you and get to see what that looks like? A young mother, invite a girl, come with you to do groceries, help you wrangle your kids and cook dinner and help you put the kids to bed, but then you give her like 30 minutes just to process what'd you see.
Mhm.
They might have never seen a Christian home, a Christian marriage. They might not even know how to cook. And so then you're kind of getting those aspects. But there is going to be an element of, yeah, it's going to take some time. And figuring out what can that look like within your life. Obviously with me, my life is built around it, but I have some friends that I've been talking with that are just saying, okay, I think I can commit to one morning a week to maybe go sit at this campus, to maybe go do that. And another friend and Aubrey is like, I can commit my Friday nights. I don't ever have anything on Friday nights, and I would love to have people over to my home.
Mm.
And so we started talking
That's
through
great.
what does that look like, and so she said, I put up flyers and was gonna do a movie night, and she goes, but no one showed up. And I said, okay, let's talk about that. If you were to see a flyer at a restaurant for a movie night at someone's home you didn't know, would you go? She said, you're right, I wouldn't.
Mhm.
I said, okay, so how do we learn, where are those students? Your idea is great, we gotta just take it back a couple steps. So you need to meet them and then do a personal invitation. And so we were sitting there, she brought a friend with her who was college age, and all of a sudden she's like, but we don't know. And she goes, well wait, I work with 20 people that are my age. I said, that's your group.
Yeah.
You go spend time there, get to know them, invite those 20 who already know you into your home, and then you do your movie night. And so it was just helping them think through, what does that even look like?
Mm.
And I think that's what's really fun. Find the thing that you love, what's the heartbeat of your church, and then how do you use that as a way to engage the students that are in your community. So.
That's great. What is one, at this point, one success story that you would share, something that's happened where a church has been able to engage some students well?
I think the newest, some of the exciting things, we've been talking with some churches in particular about doing ministry to our community college that's here. NCTC, there's about to be 5 campuses, 4 of which we're trying to intentionally think through what do we do. What's been really fun for me is we have Flower Mound First Baptist is literally just said, we want to do this and we want to engage Flower Mound. What does this look like? And so they're just asking questions. I got to take them to go sit down with the director of that campus, who's actually a good friend of mine. She's a Christian. She does college ministry at one of our local churches. And they're already starting to actively think through, what does this look like? They've already been doing ministry specifically to the faculty that are there. And they're trying through that to figure out, what does it look like for us to engage students? They're kind of in that recon stage of like, they're trying to figure out, when are students here? What would it be for us to be around? What would be a good way to engage students? We're talking about tabling, we're talking about all of those things. And so for me, it has been so fun to watch them get so excited and to say, we want to do this, to take them to have that meeting, and now they're the ones that are talking to Jessica. And then I'm just the one coming in and saying, okay, how can I help you? What does this
Right.
look like? And so I think that's been the most recent conversation that's been happening that I've been really excited about.
Well, and I think too, and we've had this conversation early on, and that was when the BSM does have their worship service. At the conclusion of that time, they have what they call connect groups. And so that's a time where they break up into smaller groups and the kids are involved in discussion. And so one of the challenges was, would your church be willing to send someone to be a part of that worship and then to also be in the connect group?
Yeah.
Not necessarily as a facilitator, but just to be in the group.
Listen, pray together.
Yeah, and to be around the students.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in that, Stephanie has stated that at least 2 to 3 churches, that was how they really began to grow their college ministry, was by coming to the worship service, hanging out with the students, getting to know them, and building that relationship. And through that relationship, it created that credibility. So then at some point, that student then says, so where do you go to church? And so that's been a way for that to transpire, and that's been exciting, honestly. And truth be told, that would be a key goal, is that student would create some connection here. Folks from other churches would connect with them, and then in turn, those students would get plugged in at the local church.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible.
Yeah, because we want them to have that paradigm when they leave campus. There's not a BSM when you
Correct.
graduate from college. So
Correct.
we want them to have a love for the local church and to know how to connect and serve wherever it is that they go after they graduate. So yeah, that's great. One more thing, as you guys go into this next season of planning and strategy, what is on your radar? What's your goal next?
We've shifted this last year, and even more so in this upcoming year, from event focused, like we want to do an event to meet students, to one-on-one individual conversations. And so UNT does something called First Flight Week. And so we would do an event every night, so it was 6 events. It was completely exhausting, but we were meeting different students, but they weren't always sticking. And so now we do 2 or 3 events, which frees up time for churches to get to do events during the week. And sometimes they'll use our building, or we'll just publicize their events. But we've shifted into something we call connection meetings. And so if we get 500 contacts, we will individually contact every single person, and then we hope to get to sit down with at least 300. And through that, we're having an opportunity. We have 3 things that we talk to them about. We want to help you connect to God, connect to friends, and make an impact on campus. And through that, we're getting to hear their story. We're getting to hopefully share the gospel. We get to talk to them about what could it look like for them to connect here at the BSM. What are they interested in? And then we get to talk to them about how can they connect to a local church. And to get to have those conversations, like I said, we had over 300 of them last fall. And we actually have this on our website. So students almost weekly will sign up for a connection meeting. And so I just realized really quickly, I was like, the value of that one-on-one conversation where you're just getting to sit down with me, or one of my staff members, or key student leaders. We're very specific about who gets to have a connection meeting right now. And that has just led to being able to walk with some students through some really hard things. And they might not even be connected here, but they'll still reach out to me and just say, I don't have any other adult that can talk to me. This is happening. We met for this. Can I talk to you about it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or I just had some students who came in and said, I'm too busy. I probably can't get involved here, but can you help me find a church? And then we've had students that from those connection meetings have been connected here. Now they're leaders, now they're connected in a local church. And the whole hope is to not help them, like I say, connect to God. Wherever they are on that process, maybe it's you just have questions, maybe you've never thought about it, and we get a chance to share the gospel.
Right.
Or you're like, I want to grow, and okay, what does that look like? How can we help you there? Connect to friends. Isolation is huge when it comes to our college students today. They don't know how to talk to one another. They don't understand friendship. And so we've built some things into our system that help us address